Let's see. Is it too high? That's good enough. Okay. So, this is Sherry Farfalla, Mystical Empress. I decided I'd shoot a video today because I have too many stories to write about. So it's easier to just go ahead and talk about them. It's been a very busy 2 weeks. I've been pretty tired. Energy work takes a lot out of you. And my work seems to be evolving. And I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit because I've been praying since 07. Let's see. No, 05. Yeah. I've been praying for the gift of healing since 05, and I can pinpoint it to that date because I went to an Abraham Hicks workshop in Dallas, and I talked to them about it because all of my life I've had people and animals come to me who were sick mentally, emotionally, physically. And when I was a kid, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't figure it out, and it was heartbreaking for me because a lot of animals came to me right before they died, and wild animals, domestic too, but mostly wild animals. And so I went to this Abraham Hicks workshop, and I actually got in the hot seat, as they call it, and was able to talk to Esther Abraham. And I've moved away from channeling now, but the story is still pretty good. I had my cat at the time. I had a black cat, and her name was Xena, and she had caught a lizard, and I love lizards. In the South, they're anoles. A lot of people call them chameleons, but they're not true chameleons. I love true chameleons. I'd love to own one. It had like an atrium or something to put it in, something jungle-like. That's a fantasy of mine, having a home with a atrium in it with trees and birds and lizards and all that. A monkey or two. But anyway, the cat caught one of these, and I saw it in the house, and they're bright brown, bright green. Well, this one was turning black because it was on its way to death. And there were holes all in its body from the cat chewing on it. And so I grabbed him up, and I had been really focusing on Jesus Christ of Nazareth, his healing gifts and how he would heal the sick and, do these miraculous healings on them. And I was able to do that because, these people keep coming to me, and I want to be able to help, So anyway, I ran outside and I sat on the back porch, and all I could think to do was focus purely on this little lizard's well-being and rejuvenation. And I sat down on the porch, and I held the lizard in my hand, and I just stick out a little bit so he wasn't too freaked out. I mean, how freaky is that? A giant grab you and put you in their hands, and then you worry they're going to eat you. I imagine what goes through a lizard's mind, or any creature's mind. So anyway, I sat there and prayed, and I said, God, please, if it's this lizard's will to live, if it even wants to live. I didn't know. I mean, how do you know? I don't ever try to override someone's will or some thing's will. So I just prayed, if this lizard is to live, please send healing energy through my hands. And I just sat there, and I focused purely on what that lizard would look like if he was healthy, If he was happy and healthy, what would a lizard be doing? You know, he'd be running across the grass, he'd be catching bugs, whatever. So I just saw that. I never once thought about the reality in my hand, which was a black, holy, fine lizard. So I sat there and I poured all that focus. And I'd say it was probably about 5 minutes. I started feeling a squirm in my hand, and I opened my hand, and the lizard was green. And he was perked up, and he was full of life. And I let him down. He jumped off on the grass. And before he ran away, he turned and he looked back at me, and then he left. So that was pretty miraculous. A couple of weeks later, I was outside in this storage. It really was storage. It was a shop that I had on my land, and I had a weight bench and everything out there in the shop. And it was my routine to go out there in the evening when it was cool and work out. So I was out there, and it had one of those roll up doors. So the door, I had it rolled up, and I was working out. All of a sudden, I saw this thing come flying through the door, and it hit the table beside me, fell out. And it was a hummingbird. He was out of gas. And immediately I went back to the lizard, and I thought, okay, if it worked that time, surely it'll work this time. Let's see what we can do. So I grabbed the little bird again, let him be able to, his head sticking out where he could see. He was chirping, chirping, chirping. If you've ever heard a hummingbird chirp, it's really high pitch. And now I'm going to get pollen in my throat and start coughing on you guys. Sorry. Anyway, so I take this hummingbird and I put him, I'm sitting on the back porch. For some reason, it was the back porch is where I felt like I needed to be. So I went and sat on the porch, did the same exact thing. I prayed, God, if this bird is to live, please flow your love, your energy, your healing through my hands. Okay. So again, it was about 5 minutes. It wasn't long. I focused on the bird flying and going to flowers. Again, I felt the squirming in my hand. I opened my hand. The little bird flew up. He was completely recharged. He flew up and landed on the porch. I had this wrought iron, I don't know what you call it, column, pillar, whatever. And he landed on that. And I said, well, maybe he's hungry. So I ran and got a hummingbird feeder, and I on this thing. He never flew away. And I put the little hummingbird feeder up there where he could eat, and he didn't. So then he flew right up to my face. He just hovered there. So I put my finger up, and he landed on my finger, and he ate. And then he flew up into the tree because it was getting dusk. So when I went to the Abraham Hicks workshop, I talked about that. And they told me then, they said, there's going to be many people that come to you that are like that hummingbird. And, oh, I'm going to cry telling you this. I cry every time I listen to that tape. They said, you're not going to force what you offer on. You're going to freely offer it, and they'll take what they can. And what they can't take, they'll go somewhere else. And that was in 2005. I was just starting my acting. I had a thriving wholesale nursery business, and I was doing the psychic work and side. I lived in the South. This was not a market because, like I've said in the past, it was seen as evil work. So everything I did was in private. So it was not, even though I strongly desired to heal, I was not thinking, oh, this is what I'm going to end up doing. So here we are, 05, 15, 16 years later, 15, it was in the fall when this happened. So 15 years later, I do reading work, clearing work, DNA work. I do all this work now. And when I first started doing the work full time for, clients, hang on, I had no idea how the work would expand and evolve. And now, and it didn't evolve through my planning. A lot of people plan goals and, they rigidly structure their path. And I follow my passion. And a lot of the planning and the goals spontaneously, organically come into focus and then manifest. I can plan and I can strategize with the best of them, but my life is not meant to work that way. Astrologically, my North Node is in Pisces in the 12th house. My Pisces, and Neptune is now transiting my first house. There's a lot of Pisces energy. And Pisces is the opposite of Virgo planning. Pisces moves in faith. Faith, a higher power, calling the shots, pulling the strings, lining up the things, the events. So God has brought work to me that I can't even believe that I do. I never in my entire life, and I used to be a planner. I used to be, all about goal setting, ambition, motivation, career. I had it all mapped out. And as I said, that's not meant to work for me this time. Plans collapsed. They crashed and burned. And so when I just gave up and said, I'm done with this, whatever's to be is going to be. And God started sending me all these people. And it started when we lived in Denver, Colorado. I started having all these people from Colorado coming to me, with spiritual problems, went beyond just a psychic reading. It was, I need help. And, they were speaking to me, telling me they had curses, they had demons, they had this and that on them. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not your girl. I don't have any desire to do any of that. And it just kept coming and coming and coming. And God knew, send me a child and I won't be able to say no. And the first person I ever cleared was a 9-year-old child. And you said, what in the world? Why would a 9-year-old need that kind of help? Well, back in those days, I've only been to 2 people's homes that I cleared. Everybody else has been over the phone. But back then, I went. And this was one of them. I went to this boy's house, and I've always just into things. And I got Aries intercepting the first. I got a lot of Aries going on here. And I just take a chance. I believe 100% in the old adage, fake it till you make it. And so I jump into things, not recklessly, but I get a feeling this is what I'm supposed to do, and I don't think about it. I don't worry about it. I don't get scared. I just do it. And I trust that the steps will be provided. So I went over to this kid's house, and I took a crucifix with me. And, back in those days, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to figure it out as I went. And this kid had no idea what that was. And he was fascinated with it. And I went through and I cleared the house. And in one little section, I saw where the mother was practicing magic. She'd already said this kid was being terrorized at night by spirits and things. And the children and the pets are the first ones to notice it because they're most sensitive to energy. And so this, and I never forget, I saw this woman had a drawing. She had some candles. You can always tell when it's magic by the stuff that's sitting around. And she had some candles and she had some little, symbols. And she had a drawing, and the drawing looked like some kind of demon or something. And we talked about Jesus, and she said, well, I teach my son that he was an ascended master like Muhammad and Buddha. And yeah, I knew the scoop. I've been down the New Age path. I used to say the same things myself. And so I ended up giving that child that crucifix. And that was the first clearing I've ever done. And now hundreds of clearings later. You'd be surprised. I do a lot of children. Sometimes they pick this stuff up environmentally. Sometimes they pick it up because of their parents, what their parents are doing. So a lot of times it happens when the family is broken and the parents are divorced and one parent is doing dark things and the other person's not doing dark things, and then the child suffers. So anyway, I've gone through hundreds of these at this point, and somewhere along the way, I'm not really sure where, but the healing that I've been praying about all these years, started happening. And the way it happened was the spiritual healing, because I'm not a doctor. I'm not licensed to do, healings, but God is. God doesn't need a license. So how it evolved was, the clearings started out, I'd go in and I would look for things attached to the person. And it's things of the spirit world. And that list grows. I think the way that I started doing this, I couldn't find anybody to help all the people who were coming to me. I was looking for people to help people coming to me, and no one would respond to me. It was like nobody was doing the work. They had all this stuff on the internet, but nobody was actually doing the work. And I'm like, well, what gives? So that's how it started. But after I got into it, God opened me up more to see. And they would, that's the gift. It's a sight. It's an inner vision. I used to think years and years ago, when I was trying to develop get my psychic skills more developed, I used to think that I was like I'm looking at you, looking at like I would try to read auras, and I'd want to see the colors. But now I understand it's not a five senses physical kind of sight. It's an internal sight. Now, some people, they can leave their eyes open and see, and I'll do that, but I see better with my eyes closed. So when I'm working on somebody, I'm sitting there with my eyes. A lot of times I'll open my eyes and I won't really be looking out here. I'll just be like still seeing internally, but my eyes will be open. I don't know if that makes any sense. So anyway, I would do these clearings. Now the Virgo South Node does get a say-so. I have my sessions, fairly organized. There is a definite way that I go about doing the work. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I go through, and that keeps me focused. But I'd go in and I would look at people, and then I started looking at their DNA, and started working with ancestral curses. Every person I work on, I say, okay, if any of the ancestors have problems, if there's any generational curse or any block with the ancestry, I am available, Lord, for that information to come through. Then the DNA, I started looking at the DNA, and because I'm not a doctor, oftentimes I don't know what I'm seeing. I just describe it to the person. And the Holy Spirit has placed knowledge in my path when I wasn't even looking for it. I'll be sitting here watching a video on YouTube, and all of a sudden I'll see something that matches what I've seen in a session. Like, for example, I saw the other day, when I'm looking at the DNA strand, I'll see these things that look like, I always say they're like Lego blocks, and they'll be stacked on top of the strand. And God's shown me this doesn't belong. So when I go in there, I'm very much focused on cleansing, cleaning up everything. And I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know what a person's DNA needs to be. That's ridiculous. And I hear a lot of people that do this work claim, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that to your DNA. And I'm thinking, hell no, you're not. I don't know you. I don't know what you have attached to you. I don't know what your intention is. So when I go in there, I say, whatever you have, God, Hashem, Yahweh, whatever your intention for this soul is in their DNA, please restore it to that. I don't try to figure it out. If the DNA needs to grow, if there needs to be more strands or whatever, they call the DNA coding, I let God figure it out. I'm not smart enough, wise enough, or whatever to make those kind of calls. He's shown me when it's off, and so I know where to request a healing, but I don't get into all that manipulation because that's not my job. So anyway, the DNA started working its way into the session. And then I said, well, I need to look at the people's, not only their aura, what's in their energy field, the etheric, the mental, the emotional, physical body. So then I said, okay, let me go into the physical body and see, because these entities will get in. There's a lot of times they get in the spine, because the spine is like the main computer of the system. And so you mess with the spine, it affects everything. So when I get in the spine, I'm looking to see if there's any, anything from psychic hooks, spears, entity attachments, the list just goes on. So most of the time when people tell me, a lot of detail, they don't go into, well, I've got this problem and this problem. They're mainly just like, I'm desperate, I'm seeing things, I'm hearing things, I'm in depression, I'm anxiety, I'm freaked out all the time. That's the kind of things they tell me. Well, then when I get in their body, I start seeing things. And, for example, like God shows me what it's like. Let's see. It's like I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, God, I want to stand back and I want to see their physical form and see if there's anything that I need to look at. And it's like he starts highlighting different areas of the body. So I go to that area and I kind of feel around what's going on. So an example would be the womb, going into a woman's womb area, and it feels real congested. Sometimes I may see clumps or something, and I may mention, do you have issues with endometriosis? Have you had abortions? And when I ask them, they always confirm. Yesterday, I was with a man from Portugal, and they were showing me, the Holy Spirit, God. I work with the Trinity, and then I have a handful of archangels I work with, and Raphael and Michael do a lot of the physical work because they heal and they cut cords and things like that. So anyway, um, they were showing me. I got to his thigh, his left thigh, and it was like the energy stopped. It didn't go down the leg. And as soon as I said that, he said, "Oh," he said, my I broke my left foot and they had to do surgery on it." And he said, "They say I've lost 40%." He didn't say what he lost. I'm assuming use of it or something. I don't know. And so I was like, looking for the origin of that. So from there, I was taken up to the spine, and I said, "Well, you got nerve damage that's happened." Now, I didn't say that because I'm a doctor. I said that because I could see it was like you see electricity flow and it stops abruptly. So I told him, I said, "Well," I said, I don't know how this is connected to your back, but it is." And he said, "Well, I fell." So, the falling, the back out of alignment didn't cause the foot to be broken. But, if you've been to a chiropractor and you've learned anything about the nervous system, nerves as well as blood, they help nourish all these parts of your body. And when there's a cutoff somewhere, you're not getting the nourishment, the oxygen, the blood flow, the electrical flow, and all of that. So, anyway, that's just an example. But I'm noticing that more and more in these clearings, God is revealing things in the body to me. And as and when I was working on that man yesterday, I pray and I ask God, please send Archangel Michael, Raphael in here to work on this, whatever needs to be done. And as I'm doing that, the man's telling me I can feel tingling all down my legs. I can feel it. He said it's feeling lighter in there. And then I got up to his heart, and I'll see what I call a psychic hook. And what it looks like is a big meat hook. That's what they look like. And he had one right in the heart. So, you can kind of imagine somebody's got something like that in their heart. They've had some kind of massive betrayal or hurt around the heart area. And so, Archangel Michael and Raphael, they do a type of psychic surgery to remove it and then seal it off, because you don't want to leave holes on the etheric plane, because then junk comes in and attaches. So then we got to go through the entity release again. So anyway, when I did that, he told me, he said, I when you were working on my heart, he said, I felt pressure and like a release there. He said, I could feel it very powerfully. I had a dentist call me last week, beginning of the week. Feels like I live 1,000 lives every week. So much happens. And I'm on so many timelines, so many things, and oh man, it gets really overwhelming. But anyway, she called, and she had considered going to medical school because she was so brilliant in the body's functioning and anatomy and all that stuff when she was in dental school. She told me that the other day. She called years ago, and then she called the other day for another one. I haven't talked to her in about 4 years. And I said, well, this is going to be interesting to have you in here, because you'll be able to compare and contrast my work from then to now. And she did. And when we were working on her, I was going through her body, seeing things and telling her what I saw. And she told me after the session, she said, yes, I can tell your gifts have grown a lot. She said, I enjoyed you giving me, your perspective. You have a basic understanding, of the body and what's going on. And the insight you were giving me gave me answers to things, that has been bothering me that I couldn't figure out, couldn't get a grasp on. Another lady called. This one was in India, and she called, and when I was going through her body, I saw that I saw the flora in her stomach was off, which that's common. But in her case, she had gastric bypass surgery. And for whatever reason, again, I don't know all this. I'm just basically a reporter. And I said, your flora is off. You need to get that back in alignment. I said, but then we went down into her, it showed me down into her intestines, her lower bowels. And it was, and this lady, I don't know, she's probably in her 60s. And so basically, she had all this backed up fecal matter because her body's not eliminating properly. And she'd already told me I don't drink much water. Look, you're backed up. And when that stuff is sitting in your body, it's breeding toxins that make you sick, because the toxins, the bacteria and all that stuff comes up from your abdomen and goes through your body. And I told her, I said, you're not processing and eliminating as quickly as you should be, so you may want to look into some, getting some fiber, like psyllium husk, whatever, fibers for your body. But I always tell these people, I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to diagnose, prescribe, treat, or anything else. I'm just telling you from a psychic level what I see. You can do what you want with the information. But it appears that God is opening up more and more information in these sessions. It's going way beyond just casting off spirits. And I firmly believe that all disease, this is a true shamanic perspective on this. All disease, spiritual disease. If you're not straight in your spiritual life, it starts going into your emotional life, your mental life, your physical life. All of these things get impacted. So, Westerners tend to look at the physical. They try to get around the emotional. If they have to deal with the emotional, they'll pop a pill, call it a day, or they'll drink something, or they'll take drugs. But the physical, they'll either go get it cut out, they'll medicate it, they'll do whatever they can to just stop the pain or the imbalance. So you start on that level, and a lot of times people who come to me, they've already gone that route, so now they're backing up to the spiritual route. And if you start the spiritual route, a lot of times you don't have to go through the physical, because it never comes to that. The physical, look at it in this terms. The physical, the third dimensional level, everything starts in spirit and then it works its way down into manifestation. And so if you've already got a physical disease or imbalance, it's taken some time to get into physical. This didn't just start. It's probably been brewing for several years, maybe your whole life. So I go in, I clean people as best I can, and the healing part with the physical stuff is getting very pronounced now in the sessions. I guess it'll take a little bit of time to see what happens. I mean, I don't know. I don't go into this looking for that, but people bring it. And it's a little